Hi, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us today. Today, we are going to be discussing cover letters. So the number one question I get from students when we are discussing cover letters is the idea of what do I need to discuss? What are employers looking for? This question actually comes up quite often, not just with cover letters, but with resumes, with updating our LinkedIn and Handshake profiles. So I'd like to always start the conversation off by reminding us of the NACE, the National Association for College and Employers study that they have done repeatedly, talking about the 8 career competencies. These are very important because this study has been working with employers, reviewing the top 8 skills or competencies that employers are looking for in early talent, in you. So these 8 competencies are across the board in all industries, in all levels, in all areas. And when you review these 8 competencies, I don't believe that any of these will really surprise you. So this idea of professionalism, communication, career and self-development, teamwork, technology, critical thinking, equity and inclusion, and leadership. So as we start to talk about some of the concepts today, I want you to filter through your experiences, filter all your experiences through this lens of these competencies, because these 8 skills are what we know employers are going to be looking for, whether you're looking at teaching, whether you're looking at accounting, marketing, whatever industry that is, all of the 8 of these are very relevant. So I also like to kind of set the scene with the importance of our application documents to an employer. Your application document should be very clear to your employer, your potential employer, where you as an applicant overlap with what they're looking for in the job. That should be the sum of your application documents, including your resume, your cover letter, your LinkedIn, your interviewing, your conversations with employers. Everything should be completed with the lens of, again, what have I identified as key things that that employer is going to need from me? And your goal is to communicate that clearly and effectively to the employers. So job search letters have kind of evolved over time. When we talk about job search letters, we're talking about many different forms of communication that you have with employers, written communication. For today's purposes and for this presentation, we're going to focus on job search cover letters. So once upon a time, a cover letter was the cover of the application package that you would send to employers. Of course, this has kind of evolved as online application portals have become much more common, but they are absolutely still have a role in the hiring process. So I actually prefer to use a different term for cover letters, one that I feel like is a little more relevant now, and that is a motivation letter or letter of intent. So I like to point out that a motivation letter or a letter of intent, it can be very applicable not only for your job or internship search, but also for those students or candidates that are looking to pursue higher education, continuing education, a graduate school. Many of those different programs require a statement of purpose or letter of interest. Your content here will slightly change depending on the program and how the prompt that they give you, but the overall idea and concept is the same. It is telling the employer or program why that role, why that program. So let's talk more about that. So again, the overall purpose of a letter of intent or statement of purpose is the why. It is very difficult, and I would actually argue near impossible to write an effective, meaningful cover letter that is a blanket letter to be used in any situation. And the reason for that is there is no why. yes, there's a why you, but the why you for that role is missing, and that oftentimes is the most important. So it's always great to start this conversation off with the why this role, why and how do you align for that? Obviously, depending on your background and your experiences and your stage in your career, this why can change, but the why is what stands you out from other candidates. Other candidates are going to have your same skills. Other candidates may even have the same experiences or same degree, but the other candidates are not going to have your same why. And we know that we as humans purchase the why, not necessarily the what you do. So the more practice you have with communicating that to employers, and that starts with really your self-understanding of that, the easier and these letters are going to be, and the more effective your writing will be. So again, make it relevant to your experiences, your specific personality, tone, and the specific opportunity that you're applying for. Yes, it's possible to have a kind of a format and structure that you use for all of your cover letters, but the meat, the bones can remain the same. However, the nitty-gritty details and examples and keywords that you use should all be hand-picked for that specific opportunity. And of course, I always like to say, you're going to get many, many, many opinions on what your document should or should not include. At the end of the day, you are the one person that should be proud of this. Most of my rules you can break. The only one I will highly encourage you not to break is to be intentional. If you make a decision about what your document should or should not include, make sure you make it intentionally and with thought behind it, and not just because someone told you to, or even worse, a template. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. So again, motivation letters, they're the foundation of all search letters. Again, cover letters have kind of evolved and changed over time. You are no longer, more than likely, going to print off an application package and send on beautiful resume paper, a cover letter and application and a resume in a physical format to an employer. We're probably not going to do that. Your two most common ways of applying are going to be the portal process of applying to a larger company and submitting their application and then uploading documents. Oftentimes, if there is not a specific space for you to download the cover letter, then there will be a supporting documents section at the end where you can download or upload your cover letter and resume and any other supporting documents. For marketing students, that's always a really great place to include your portfolio if you have one. So that is the most common. However, it's not the only way that we apply. Oftentimes, I hear many candidates actually get their opportunities through word of mouth or through networking. And oftentimes what that process looks like is running into someone at ZBeans and them encouraging you to, oh, I think I may have someone in hiring that would love to get to know you. Can you send me your resume? In that situation, you're not going to just upload a document. I would not encourage you to email that person with two documents attached, and one being a cover letter and one being a resume. The reason why you would not want to do that is because, well, people don't open attachments unless you tell them there's a reason to. And so in that case, what you're doing is you're going to take that heart and soul of what you would include in your professional official cover letter, and you're going to boil it down to the key main non-negotiable concepts that must be known about you to get them to open up that PDF, your resume, and to get them to forward it, actually make good on their word and forward it to that hiring manager. So in that case, what you'll do is you'll take the idea of that motivation letter, what you would have written in a formal letter, and you will write it in the body of your email. You have to be much more concise and succinct here, because our attention span in email is not that in paper, so it's cut in half. So you want to make sure that you're getting right to the point instead of multiple paragraphs supporting your experiences. You're going to probably just do a short introductory, reminding the person who you are, where you met, why you're sending this, and then the next paragraph talking about why your experience is aligned with that industry or what made you interested in continuing the conversation with conclusion. So that is not the type of letter that we're talking about today, because I believe that when you write a strong cover letter, it is easier to adapt that to that email format if necessary. So what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about your formal cover letter that you send to employers. So that formal letter is going to start with this is kind of the outline or structure or bones of what you can expect on that letter. And that is going to be along the lines of, up at the top, you can see we have your name. This is the same header. I want to point out that this is the same header that you have in your resume, because when you're printing off your resume, or if the employer, the hiring supervisor, manager does print off and physically take to whoever's making the decision, you want to make sure that all of your documents belong and appear to be a part of one whole. So you want to use the same format, same font, same size, same feel as your cover letter and resume. So making sure, again, that your contact information up at the top matches and that your font matches throughout. So I have my name, I have my contact information, I have the date that the letter was sent, the address block, and then I'm addressing it to my hiring manager. So I want to pause here, and this is oftentimes a question that I get is about hiring managers. Who do I write this to? I would like for you to take a moment at some point after or during this conversation to go take a moment to look at a job description. Oftentimes when job descriptions are written, one of the first, when us as applicants read job descriptions, it's very common for us to just skip straight down the requirements into the duties. I would challenge you not to do that when writing a cover letter. Go back up and read that top couple paragraphs, because that is where you're going to find some really important information that's going to be necessary for a really effective cover letter. One of the pieces of information you should find there is who this role reports to. So for example, I was just looking up a job description with a candidate, and they had written their cover letter, and they completely bypassed that first paragraph. And in the second sentence, it says, such and such company is searching for such and such intern, reporting to the director of marketing. And that was incredibly helpful because it gave them the position title of who their hiring hiring manager or supervisor will be. So yes, you could stop there and use that title. However, in the day and age where we have everything available to us electronically online, and you can basically find anyone that you want to, I would challenge you to set your phone timer for 10-15 minutes and take a good deep dive on the company's website, on LinkedIn, to see if you can find the actual person that serves in the role as director of marketing or that hiring manager. Because what you'll do is then address your letter to that individual person. I promise you that this matters because it shows us as employers that you took the time to do research and to find who this person is, and that you are taking the time to address that individual person. I had a student once say, well, many students tell me, well, Ashley, what if I find the wrong person? Yes, that does happen. In fact, that's happened at my place of work before. We had a candidate write to a previous hiring manager that was no longer with our organization, but was still listed on our website. that in no way looked poorly on the candidate. Multiple candidates did that, so they were not the only one. And two, that reminded us that we made a mistake and we hadn't updated our website. That was on us, not on the individual. And we were really, again, it stood out to us that they were obviously the 3 candidates out of the 100 plus that looked on our website and were paying attention. So I would always challenge you, find, and then I kind of look at it in layers, right? In best case scenario is to find the individual person, address them professionally, Mr. or Mrs. or Dr. so-and-so, and then their position title, Director of Marketing, and addressing it to that individual. If you can't find the specific person's name, another route that you can go is maybe you can't find the hiring manager's name. Maybe the job description doesn't say that you are reporting to the director of so-and-so. I would then say, look to see if you can find the director or head of talent acquisition or recruitment. It never hurts to potentially address your letter to that individual. So best case scenario, hiring manager by name. Second best case scenario, the director of talent acquisition or HR by name. If you still can't find that, then go with that position title. So director of marketing without the specific name, or director of talent acquisition. If you absolutely cannot find any of that, can't find a position titles, you don't know who the head of recruitment is, none of that, then the lowest or most broad you will go is hiring manager. You do not want to use the term to whom it may concern. There's too much research out there that shows that employers, hiring managers are not looking for that and are actually turned off by that language. We don't talk like that anymore. And so it sounds inauthentic. So you will not use to whom it may concern. Okay, now going back to our letter. We have our header. We have addressed it to the hiring manager. Paragraph 1 is going to talk about who are you and what do you want. Here you need to explicitly state the position title by name and the company by name. This is an official title. So if you're applying for the director or the business analytics intern role, you want to capitalize business analytics intern. You want to write the official title here. If you are applying to a company that has a longer name and oftentimes may go by an abbreviation, if it's not the official abbreviation, I would not use it. Look at the job description. How are they referring to themselves? That is kind of the rule of thumb, how I would then address them here. I am a senior marketing student from Mercer University looking to apply for the graphic design internship at Pepsi-Cola. Whatever that is, but you need to explicitly say here, who are you? What are you applying for? And tease them into reading the next couple paragraphs by talking about the why you and why you're interested. I strongly believe that I am the best candidate for this role because of A, B, C, and then you will support A, B, C in your paragraphs 2 and 3. Paragraphs 2 and 3, you are providing context to your resume. It's very easy, and we oftentimes find ourselves rehashing or re-explaining, just repeating what is on our resume. You want to move away from that. Take a moment and think about when you were writing your resume. Is there an experience on there that you just could not really articulate the meaning or the power or how related it is to this company or how related it is to their mission or vision or what they're doing? So for those students that I work with who went to study abroad, Mercer on Mission, Traffic Jam, accounting students who participated in VITA, many other students across the university who participate in these fabulous experiential components of their degrees oftentimes those are the most challenging to put into bullets because it's really difficult to articulate the impact that you made on that community, on and what that community or experience, the impact it had on you, and how it aligns to what you're then going to do for that company you're applying for. So I would challenge you that this is where you state that. You can paint more of a picture, you can tell more of a story in your cover letter here than you can ever effectively do in a bullet or a few bullets on your cover letter. So if you have anything like that, this is your place to address it. So 1 or 2 stories, brand stories, situations that are relevant to what you're applying for. Make sure that you are handpicking these for that specific role. You may have 4 experiences that you are really proud of and you like talking about, but you're going to pick the top 2 that are most appropriate for this specific role and support them. If as you write your letter, you're noticing that you're using words like upon graduation, then after that, then you're probably going down that rabbit hole of just rehashing your resume. So be cautious of that language. Read back over that and flip your focus. So instead of using that timeline kind of transition, use a storyline transition. So read back over it. That's a great place to start to get thought on paper, but read back over it and see if you need to restate in a different way that that story or introduce that concept rather than that timeline kind of format. So I've introduced myself and what I want. I've supported it into some strong, concise bullet or paragraphs, and then my final paragraph will be a conclusion, gratitude, call to action. And then my final will be a signature, closing and signature. I highly recommend any opportunity you get to use a handwritten signature. More so today than ever before, handwritten signatures just are not often seen. And so they are a nice personal touch that employers do recognize, and it shows again that you went one step further and beyond. So I recommend doing that. You'll notice that this needs to be 1 page and no more. Employers oftentimes don't spend too much time looking at cover letters, especially if it's one that they feel like they've read before, if it's too kind of like a set template sounding. So you do want to be concise, to the point, tell them what you want, why they need to choose you, and being grateful in your conclusion. So in order to write an effective cover letter, these are the steps that I like to walk through. First, thinking about what are you applying for? Do your research. So this means looking at the company's website. Do not overlook this step. Companies spend a great amount of time in branding, and that branding process is not specific, not only to their customers, but it's also to be able to attract the type of candidates and employees and team members that they want to be a part of their team. So their brand is intentional to that of their customers, who they want to work for and who they want to work with as well. So be aware of that. It is intentional. And so look and see the different things that they're talking about. Is there a lot of discussion about their community? What things matter to this company? And at what points does that overlap with what matters to you? Who are you, who, what, and where are you applying? Take notes again, where that overlaps. If there are certain things about the organization that really get you excited and you go, ooh, that's me, your cover letter is the opportunity to talk about that. Then identify the best type of letter. So are you sending this in an email to someone, or are you writing an official letter to be uploaded as a PDF in an application portal? And then draft your letter. Just get words on paper at this point, and then go back, and it's okay if you go through several different iterations. That I certainly have to. But before you go and send this, I really want to challenge you to read it aloud. Even better yet, read it aloud to someone. That is where you will catch mistakes or words that you left out, or you'll have better ways to word something if you read it out loud to yourself. So read it aloud, have others read it, and make sure that it makes sense, not just in your brain, but as written on the paper. So next, let's think about some important pieces of your cover letter. Of course, it needs to express your interest in the specific role and company. It needs to be clear why you're applying and what you're applying for. You want to provide backstory or context to your experiences. This next point, the address an elephant in the room. This is very important, especially for those individuals that are maybe those individuals that majored in one thing but are now applying for a position in a different area. That would be an elephant in the room, right? Because my major on my document is going to say that I was a marketing major, but here I am applying for a human resources role. We want to make sure that to address that, this is your opportunity to paint the narrative of why those experiences still make you a good candidate for the role. If you don't address it, they will, and they will draw their own conclusions. So this is your opportunity to address it as a strength before they read it as a weakness. Another opportunity, another example of when you would want to do this is for my career changers who maybe have had previous careers and are now pivoting to a different industry. For example, if one day I wake up and decide to leave higher education, I'm going need to address how my skills transfer to that new industry. And so that would be my elephant in the room. If you're applying to an organization that is across the country, and you need to address that you are looking to relocate, this is another great opportunity to address it. So again, don't overlook that. If you have an elephant in the room, if you have something in your brain about your application that is troublesome, or you're concerned might hold them back from contacting you, address it before they have to. That way you can get ahead of it, and again, really steer the direction that it goes into. Think about what you bring to the table and transition into how this opportunity aligns with your future goals. Again, that's addressing the why. Why does this position abroad, how does it play into your future goals or career? And then always concluding with gratitude. I can't express to you the importance of your tone, especially more than ever now. Now that AI can write anything and everything, there is a specific tone that you may read that you can't get really personalized. That humanizing tone, AI and computers can't necessarily bring in your personal experiences and personality. And so now more than ever, that professional use of your personality and tone of voice is more important than ever before. So keeping it on the lines of professional while also pulling in your personal tone and voice is important. So some expectations of what you should have or should not include on your cover letter. Formatting is very important, and spelling, punctuation, grammar, because you don't want to distract them from your content. You want them to stay on point with what you're saying, not be distracted by the way that you formatted your document. It does need to be concise, because you are going to have other parts of your letter, including a signature and a header and all these other parts. It does need to be about 3/4 of a page, no more, because the other part of your page is going to be used in those other parts of your letter. It needs to be compelling, engaging, relevant, personalized. These are the real 4 non-negotiables, because this is what tells an employer that you're looking for, that you are truly interested. A huge barrier that recruiters run into are the amounts of candidates that apply that are not truly eligible or qualified at all. So a lot of what we have to do is weed through those that are not good candidates, period. And so we spend a lot of time doing that. So being able to set yourself apart as a truly qualified candidate and making sure that you stand out as such is very important. Another barrier that recruiters run into are candidates that are truly interested. We have a lot of candidates that apply on a whim or kind of use fast apply and are not truly interested in our company, in what we're doing, in leaving. Maybe they came home from work one day and were upset and applied, but at the end of the day, they're not going to leave. That happens. And so we spend a lot of time kind of weeding through that. And so one way that we're able to do that is we use cover letters to identify and help us sort through who truly is interested, who accidentally applied for our role. We once had a candidate apply for a role that had a PhD and was a podiatrist and owned their own practice. Why are you here? And we looked at the cover letter to answer that elephant in the room, and they never addressed it. So we didn't call and continue on with the process because we just assumed the person accidentally applied for the wrong position. So, like I said, address that and make it clear. Do not let them assume anything. You really need to be the one driving that conversation. And then relate your experiences to the exact role. This is very important. You can talk about these transferable skills all day long, but you can't assume that the person reading it or making the decision as to what candidates will get to the hiring manager really know what that role will do day to day. Every company is structured differently. I've previously worked for organizations where HR was and the recruiter were the ones with the first reads of the applications. It was our jobs to identify the top candidates to then send them to the hiring managers. Though I absolutely knew what kind of an employee the company and organization wanted to attract and draw. I knew our values, I knew our mission, I knew what was going to align with that. So that is kind of what I was looking for in a candidate. But when it came to the day-to-day operations of each individual department, I had no clue. It wasn't my job. That was the hiring manager. They were going to look to see if you were qualified. I was looking to see if you were a good fit culturally. And so address both of those. In my examples, if we go back to kind of that outline, in my examples, I always like to choose one that points out my fit to the company goals, mission, culture, and then one talking about my fit to the role, duties, expectations, because no matter who's reading my document, I am going to resonate with them, whether it be HR or the hiring manager or a department that I'm going to work with and alongside to that really, again, doesn't understand my day-to-day duties, but understands how my duties are going to impact their ability to do their job. So as a reminder, don't rehash your resume. And this comment I kind of said earlier, I want to bring back up this idea of a canned letter. It is very common, and there's lots of templates on there. You can have versions of your cover letter written for you. The thing about canned cover letters is that as recruiters, we can smell them a mile away. We've read hundreds of them. So I always really enjoyed getting a letter that was a canned cover letter because I didn't have to read it because I was confident I already had multiple times. So I would say if you do need to use a template or a resource to help you get started, that is fine. I understand that. But don't stop there. You really have to do the work to make sure that you are aligning it with you in the role and taking off and shaking off all and any canned letter smell that may come along with your letter. Using your authentic tone and voice is important and will help with that as well. If you haven't had experiences, don't say that you have. Be authentic in what you're presenting, but also how you're presenting it. Again, so a little bit more about templates, personalize every detail. If you do get into the habit of using a template, I would say make sure that you're saving your template with the highlighted sections that you need to go back and change. That way you never accidentally skip over one. I've seen that. Never, ever, ever use the phrases, your company, this position, to whom it may concern, this role. Any of that language appears to be template. So it's too broad. It can be used for anything and everything. And so again, there are multiple ways to address the company, organization, position, title, team. You can kind of mix up how you do it each time. In one location, you're talking about wanting to be a member of the marketing team. The next place you're talking about you're in the role as intern. In the next place, you're talking about impacting the PepsiCo organization. So in multiple different ways, you are addressing the specific organization structure rather than using your company, this position, or to whom it may concern. Make sure that, again, your document aligns with your resume. This is important. I see a lot of this, especially in entry-level positions where students or candidates refer to point out something like, I'm just a. This is not the approach I would use to address the elephant in the room. So saying, I'm just a sophomore applying for a role, be cautious and be aware of how you are framing. Being a sophomore eligible for a junior senior level role is something to be proud of, not talked down. And so be aware of that language. Again, that's okay if that's your first draft you kind of just spit out on paper, but your second iteration needs to go back in and adjust that language to a positive tone voice. Again, tone, I can't stress that enough. When I say professional tone, I do, of course, mean how you address things. I also mean the word choice. So saying things like you guys, y'all, that is not very professional. And so I would be aware of that. Again, you need to be aware of who your target audience is. And writing and crafting your letter to be received well by a broad audience is important. And again, read it out loud before you send. I've said that. So I want you to pause the video here and read through this letter. I think it's important that you do that. Once you read through the letter, I then want you to come back and listen to my feedback. I'll just take a moment for you to pause and read. All right, now that you've had time to read through this letter, I want to point out some things. I do want to say that this letter is not horrible. At first glance, you may believe that this letter is actually very good. I want to point out some of my thoughts. So what I would say here is, so this, the header up here does match Toby Bear's resume, which is great. I want to make sure that my email here, how I've written it, is exactly the same how I've written it on my resume. I didn't use my my personal email on my resume, but then using my Mercer email here. Also, if you conclude with a conclusion that states your contact information down at the bottom, make sure that the contact information at the top and the bottom match. Just like when we talked about resumes, I would recommend not using the number format of your email, especially your Mercer email. because this is essentially your student ID, student social security number, if you will. So this is personal identifying information. You do not want to include this. Also, if it's because it is numerical, it's much easier if an individual is having to type it in to email you for the job applicate or for the interview, that they may key in the wrong email. So just be aware of that. You'll notice that my phone number format as well, because I've used periods, it kind of looks like all these numbers run together. So be aware of how it looks and how well it can be received by an organization. So looking at my letter, it's great. I've addressed it. Here's my address block. I'm addressing the hiring manager. That's not great. If you actually go look at the job description for this role, that it actually has the position title that I'm reporting to. So I should have used that, not hiring manager. So I look here and you notice that at one place I say the Atlanta Fox, and then the other place it says the Atlanta Hawks. So or Falcons and Hawks. So making sure I address it to the correct company, organization. As you read through this letter, you'll notice a few things. There's a lot of broad statements. So I'm particularly excited for the opportunity to take ownership of these functions. At my internship, I have demonstrated proficiency in using financial software, including ABCD. When you read, this is actually a real cover letter that I have seen. When you read this person's resume, they in fact never have used these 3 softwares. So this is in fact where I knew something was wrong. I've seen this a lot. The cover letters again demonstrate all the things that I need for, but when I go look at the resume, there's a huge gap in what I'm being told and what they are saying they've done. This is because this letter was 100% written by AI. And so when this person was writing this resume or writing this cover letter, that tells me that they did the job and they did the work of providing the AI prompt to write a letter based on the job description. But because they gave the AI no context of their experiences, and because the AI was just making assumptions based on the data it was given, it was writing it only for the job description, not the job description overlapping with that individual's experiences. And so that's why this ended up being a very ineffective, well written, but ineffective cover letter. Because again, there's a lot of empty promises. I'm the best. I have these experiences, but again, the experiences don't match up with that. I will say also it's very repetitive. It says over and over again, they have these experiences, but again, this could be easily combined. There's no support as to where they've had these experiences or why they can do these things. Down here, again, it talks about, it closes. I don't believe that there needs to be 2 separate paragraphs to close. This is a little wordy, especially for there being so little meat in context. This person did at least type in their internship, so that was good. And it's possible it could have helped me overlook the other items, but it didn't ultimately because the skills that it references having were not supported on the resume. So keep that in mind. Yes, it is very common for not only candidates to use AI to write their cover letters, but I'll say it is very common for companies to use AI to write their job descriptions. There's definitely value and benefits to that, but only if done well. So make sure you proofread, personalize it, add in your tone, add in your voice, add in your authentic self. Add in, and of course, always related to your experiences. If you say that you have had this experience, you have these skills, don't just stop there. Talk about how that customer relations experience at your summer job will help you better serve their customers. Point that out. Again, so address the company values, their mission, what they are ultimately wanting to address or solve, and how you can help with that. Be careful not to overuse broad or unsupported claims. AI can also use a tone that is overly confident. So I've seen letters generated by AI that says, I am I'm writing to for my interest in this position. I am confident that there is no better candidate than myself. My previous experience makes me superior at XYZ. Be aware of just that language. If that's not one, if it's not true, be aware of that. And two, if that's not how you would actually talk, be aware of that and adjust that language. So that broad unsupported claims, that is the number one error issue I see in templates in AI. So if you can work at peeling that off, you're doing really well. And this last point, I love pointing out, drowning the reader in word soup. So if you go back to this example, there's a lot of words to say the same thing over and over and over again. Be concise. Like, you only have 20 seconds to capture their interest. How many of you, when I said pause and read this, didn't pause and read it? Right? An employer is going to do the same thing if you don't get to the point quickly. So be aware of that. Don't drown the reader in word soup. I always have students will say, tell me, well, how long does it need to be? Well, how many words do you need to make your point? That's how long it needs to be, and no longer, period. So here's some other templates or formats or kind of structures that give you a different visual. Again, my header block, my date, my address block, salutation, addressing the individual, body, who are you, what do you want? Feel free to take a minute and screenshot this if you'd like it. Your first paragraph, again, talking about your experiences and why you're a good fit, supporting it with your middle paragraphs, and then the final conclusion, and then your close. This is another example I want to just kind of wrap up with. This is an example that's pretty common in business schools. If you use a format like this, let me tell you how to do it well. Again, dear recruiter, that's absolute worst case scenario. What you're going to do, use a address that is more personalized. But this one kind of talks about the role that they are looking to apply for and how they have 3 of the skills that are relevant to that role. If you do this, it is very easy, and we fall into the trap of using the same 3 skills for every position. Don't do that. If they aren't asking for leadership skills, if the word leadership is not once used in their job description, of course they still value someone who has good leadership skills, but that's not the one they have identified as important. So don't waste their time or your time. Talk about one that they have addressed and they have asked you for. Handpick. These 3 skills need to be physically written on that job description or on their company website under their values and mission for you to address it. So they need to be handpicked for the role. These cannot just be blanket ones that you use for every position. That will be very ineffective and it smells like a template. The second thing is, if you're going to talk all about these analytical skills, there needs to be a sentence stating how your analytical skills will be used at this organization. Again, you cannot assume that the person making the decision whether or not you get the interview actually knows everything about that job. Oftentimes, the recruiter does not, like I said earlier, but they are the gatekeeper to get you to the person that does. So address that. Again, and what this says is this says, not only do I have this skill, but it tells them how I have it, and don't forget that step of where you've gotten it from. And then this is where oftentimes an individual will have a different phone number. So this one right here is referencing the phone number with all 5s, whereas up here they have a different phone number. So be aware of that. Again, up here I have my first and last name, and down here I have my number format. Whichever you do, just be the same, be consistent. Last kind of example, this is another one I've seen before. Again, not using words like your agency. I do like here how it talks about how I know this role, how I was recommended to the position. That's really great. So if you have someone who's recommended you, pointing that out. But something using language like your agency again is too broad. And then this statement, this is rough. I've seen it quite a bit. I will call you in the next few weeks to see when we can arrange a meeting. You won't. Don't say it. Put the ball in their court. Just don't use language like this. It's not very effective. Again, thank you so much for your consideration in this process. I hope to hear from you regarding my application, something a little more appropriate, broad like that. So thank you so much for your time. Do know that I have one-on-one appointments. If you have any questions about your document or how to get started, you can schedule that. As a reminder, JobScan does have capability with helping you scan the job description and identify keywords that need to be found in your cover letter. So once you write your letter, I would highly recommend logging into JobScan and scanning it against that job description. JobScan does have a feature where it will use OpenAI to write your first draft for you. I would highly recommend against starting with that. In my experience, it's much harder to shake off that bad template smell than to use your original thoughts and then run it through AI to add value to what you have originally came up with. It tends to be much more effective than the other way around, in my opinion. So again, thanks for joining me. Hope you have a great day and good luck.